During a fight, my wife said, "I regret not giving your brother a chance when I had it." I froze. She smirked and added, "What? You knew he was always hotter than you." I didn't say a word, just left a note on the mirror. "Since you regret the marriage, I regret the mortgage." 5 weeks later, she's sleeping in her car. I never thought I'd be posting one of these, but here I am at 3 a.m., bourbon in hand, trying to make sense of how 12 years of marriage imploded in under a minute. It started with something so small. I was working late again, third time that week. Construction project downtown running behind schedule, and as site manager, that's on me. I got home around 11 p.m., exhausted, covered in dust and sweat. All I wanted was a shower and sleep. Diana was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, that look on her face I'd come to know well over the years. The silent treatment first, then the comments about my hours, how I prioritize work over her, the usual stuff. Normally I'd apologize, promise to make it up to her, maybe plan something nice for the weekend. But that night, something in me just snapped. "What do you want from me, Diana? The overtime is paying for the kitchen renovation you insisted we needed. The one you said couldn't wait another year." That's when the real fight started. Voices raised, old arguments recycled, that familiar dance of a marriage running on fumes. Until she said it. "I regret not giving your brother a chance when I had it." Everything stopped. The room went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I must have looked stunned because she smirked, actually smirked, and twisted the knife deeper. "What? You knew he was always hotter than you?" For context, my brother Mike and I were never close. 3 years younger, always the charmer, the athlete. Diana met us both at the same party 13 years ago. She chose me, or so I thought. I didn't say a word. Couldn't. Just turned around, went upstairs, locked myself in the bathroom, and sat on the edge of the tub for what felt like hours. Her words played on repeat in my head. Not just what she said, but how she said it. Like she'd been thinking it for years, like she'd been settling all this time. The next morning, I got up before her. Shower, dress, coffee, routine motions while my mind worked overtime. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment comment. This was something she'd been carrying, maybe fantasizing about. My brother, the golden boy. I wrote the note with her lipstick right on the bathroom mirror where she couldn't miss it. "Since you regret the marriage, I regret the mortgage, Dave." Then I left for work, turned off my phone, and started making calls from my office line. First call, my lawyer Philip. Known him since college. Explained everything, including the state of our finances. Second call, my bank. Third, my brother, surprisingly. That conversation was shorter than expected. "Mike, did you and Diana ever have a thing?" Silence on the line then. "Dave, what's this about?" "Just answer the question." He sighed. "She kissed me at your engagement party. Said she was having doubts. I shut it down and never told you because she swore it was just cold feet." Christ, Dave, that was 12 years ago. Fourth call, my boss, requesting emergency personal leave. Fifth call, locksmith. By 5 p.m., when Diana would normally be coming home from her admin job at the dental office, I was sitting in our living room, waiting. I'd already moved my personal belongings to a hotel and set up mail forwarding. I'd opened a new personal bank account where my future paychecks would be directed. I'd consulted with Philip about the legal process ahead. He'd cautioned me that despite the house being in my name, we'd need to follow proper legal channels for separation. Looking back, I'm not proud of how cold I was that day. But hearing your wife of 12 years say she should have picked your brother will do things to a man. Things that can't be undone. She pulled into the driveway at 5:22 p.m. I watched through the window as she parked. When she entered, I was sitting at the kitchen table, a suitcase packed beside me, my emotions locked down tight. The preliminary separation agreement Philip had helped me draft over the past 10 hours sat on the table. Not final divorce papers yet. Those would come later. But the first step. "Diana," I said as she set her purse down, "our marriage is over." She stared at me, mouth open. "What are you talking about? Because of one stupid fight?" "No, because you showed me who you really are, who you've always been." I handed her a printed screenshot of our accounts, showing I had transferred my latest paycheck to a new personal account, leaving our joint funds untouched. "I'm staying at the Marriott while we sort this out legally. I've contacted a lawyer." "Are you frickin' kidding me?" Her voice rose with each word. "Over a comment? people say things during fights, Dave. Not things like that, I said, standing. Not unless they've been thinking them for years. She switched from anger to panic, reaching for my arm. Dave, please, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to hurt you. You know Mike means nothing to me. That's exactly the problem, Diana. You wanted to hurt me. You enjoyed hurting me. And you used my brother to do it. I picked up my suitcase. Philip will be contacting you about next steps. I suggest you get your own lawyer. She followed me to the door, alternating between threats and tears. I didn't respond to either, just walked to my truck and drove away. I stayed at the hotel for 2 weeks. Diana remained in the house. Legally, I couldn't just kick her out, as Philip explained, regardless of whose name was on the mortgage. During those 2 weeks, I only communicated through Philip. I had him file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Our house had always been a point of pride for me. I'd bought it before we met, a fixer-upper in a decent neighborhood. During our marriage, I'd put thousands of hours and dollars into renovations. Diana had been enthusiastic about design choices early on, but over the years her interest shifted to just demanding upgrades without appreciating the work or cost involved. The most recent demand had been a kitchen renovation that would cost upwards of $30,000, work I'd been putting in overtime to afford. The texts started almost immediately after I left. Diana, what the F, Dave? You can't just leave like this. This is our marriage. Diana, answer your phone. You're being psychotic. Over a stupid fight? I didn't mean what I said. Then, as reality set in, please come home, we can talk about this. Don't throw away 12 years. I miss you. Please, Dave. Can we just talk? I got a new phone number and instructed Philip to handle all communications. Diana's family tried reaching out, mostly to berate me. I blocked their numbers one by one. My brother called offering support, which surprised me. We hadn't been close in years. After 2 weeks of legal back and forth, I finally agreed to meet Diana face to face. Neutral location, public place. Philip arranged it, advising me to stick to facts and avoid emotional confrontations. I got there early, saw her waiting at the coffee shop table, looking smaller somehow. Makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. You look like shit, she said as I sat down. You don't have the high ground here, Diana. She started in on how I was overreacting, how married people say hurtful things during fights, how one comment shouldn't erase 12 years. I listened until she ran out of steam. Are you finished? I asked, opening my laptop. Because I have some things to show you. First, the mortgage statements, every payment for 12 years from my account. Next, the home improvement receipts, $89,000 over the years, my credit cards. Then the property tax records. Finally, our prenup. The one her father had insisted on to protect her interests, because I was just a construction worker with uncertain prospects. The prenup that specifically listed the house as separate property, not marital property, as it was purchased before our marriage. The prenup that even had a clause about home improvements not creating marital equity if paid from separate funds. The prenup that her father's expensive lawyer had drafted, thinking it would protect her, never imagining it would instead protect me. You have 2 options, I said, closing the laptop. Sign the divorce papers as Philip has drawn them up, or we can let a judge decide. But understand this, according to our prenup, the house remains my separate property. The considerable equity we've built, also mine, because I paid for every improvement with my separate funds, which your father's lawyer so helpfully specified in paragraph 12. I've lived there for 12 years, she said. I have rights. We can argue about those rights in court if you want. Philip says even with the prenup, a judge might award you something for the duration of marriage, but it'll cost both of us thousands in legal fees, and given the clear language in the agreement, you won't get much. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The couple at the next table definitely heard, from the way they suddenly became very interested in their muffins. She started crying then. Where am I supposed to go? My salary barely covers anything. You know that. You've been living in the house for 2 weeks while I stay at a hotel. Use that time to figure it out. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the smirk. You have until the end of the month to decide. Either sign the papers as they are, or we go to court. I've also filed for possession of the house during divorce proceedings, given that it's my separate property. Philip says the judge will likely grant it. The papers offered her a small cash settlement, enough for first and last month's rent plus security deposit on a modest apartment, in exchange for an uncontested divorce. It was far less than she might have received after a court battle, but it was clean, fast, and didn't require expensive legal fees on either side. During the next 3 weeks, Diana's situation deteriorated. She finally moved out of the house after the judge granted my motion for exclusive possession, reluctantly going to her sister's cramped apartment. The sister has 3 kids and a small place. Her husband started complaining about the arrangement after just a few days. Diana's father, retired and living on a fixed income, couldn't help much financially. Her mother suggested she find a cheaper apartment. Diana couldn't afford even the cheapest studio apartment in our area on her dental office salary. Her credit was still terrible. No leasing office would touch her without a cosigner, and no one was volunteering. By week 4, tensions at her sister's place reached a breaking point, and she ended up sleeping in her car some nights. The car that was still legally mine, but that I'd allowed her to keep using temporarily. Still refusing to sign the papers, still believing she could wait me out. After consultation with Philip, I went through proper legal channels to reclaim the vehicle. Since it was solely in my name and Diana had no ownership claim to it, the court approved. I had it properly repossessed in week 5, with advance legal notice to Diana. That's when she finally broke. Showed up at Philip's office, mascara streaked down her face, wearing the same clothes as the day before, and signed everything. The settlement meant she walked away with enough cash for a small apartment deposit and first month's rent, plus her personal belongings. Nothing more. My brother later told me he'd heard through mutual friends that she had tried getting him to intervene on her behalf. He declined. That's when he finally opened up about other incidents over the years. Diana making suggestive comments at family gatherings when I wasn't in earshot, accidentally brushing against him at holidays, asking probing questions about his relationships. He said he never told me because he didn't want to create drama, and he honestly thought she was just being flirtatious by nature. It's been 6 months now. The divorce is final. In accordance with our prenup and the settlement she signed, I kept the house, both cars, and my retirement accounts. She got her personal belongings and the cash settlement I'd offered, less than I would have spent fighting a prolonged court battle, and significantly less than the 12 years of equity she might have felt entitled to without the prenup. I heard through a mutual friend in the dental industry that she's now living with a coworker, saving for a security deposit, telling anyone who will listen what a monster I am. This same friend occasionally updates me on Diana's situation, which is how I know her version of events differs substantially from reality. Her family won't speak to me, which is fine. My brother and I are talking more than we have in years. Our relationship had been strained by more than just Diana. Childhood competitiveness, different career paths, geographic distance, but removing her influence has helped us reconnect. Learning about her pattern of behavior with him made me realize she'd been subtly driving a wedge between us for years. Some nights I sit on my deck, beer in hand, and wonder if I went too far. If I was too ruthless, too cold. But then I remember her face when she said it. That frickin' smirk. She meant to hurt me, meant to humiliate me with the one comparison she knew would cut deepest. And she enjoyed it. So no, I don't think I went too far. Some words can't be unsaid. Some bells can't be unrung. Some marriages don't deserve a second chance. Thanks for the support, guys. To answer some common questions. Yes, the prenup was properly executed and reviewed by attorneys on both sides. Her dad made sure of that. Ironically, it specifically protected premarital assets and even had language about home improvements paid from separate funds. No, there were no kids, thankfully. Diana always said she wanted to wait until we were more stable. Looking back, I wonder if she was just hedging her bets. For those saying I should have kicked her out immediately, that's not how the law works, even with a prenup and the house in my name. Married couples develop legal residency rights regardless of whose name is on the deed. That's why I had to file for exclusive possession during the divorce process. Some of you asked if there were warning signs before this. There were, but I ignored them. Comments about Mike's promotions while I just managed construction sites, comparing our vacations to his business trips. Small things that seemed harmless at the time. And for the guy who asked if Mike is actually better looking than me, screw you. But also yes, former college baseball player, still has all his hair. But that's not the point. Update, it's been a year now. Diana reached out recently through a mutual friend wanting to clear the air. I declined. Some doors are better left closed. I'm dating casually, focusing on work and myself. The house is finally finished. Ironically completed the kitchen renovation she wanted so badly. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And that's enough. I caught my fiancé cheating, so canceled the engagement. Then she filed a lawsuit claiming I stole her best years and ruined her future. I said, good luck proving that. When I showed the judge her messages to her lover, she left the courtroom crying. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door. I've always prided myself on being a rational man. In business, in relationships, in life. Emotions have their place, but clear thinking is what separates success from failure. That philosophy was tested to its limits last year when my world imploded in a single night. Looking back now, I can see it was the best thing that could have happened. I'm Daniel, 41, owner of an aircraft parts manufacturing company that I built from scratch 15 years ago. It's not glamorous, but it's profitable and respected in the industry. I met Catherine, 38, at a conference 6 years ago. She was smart, driven, gorgeous, a logistics specialist for a competing firm who could match me point for point in any discussion. Our relationship developed quickly. Within a year, she'd relocated to be with me. 2 years later, I proposed. We set a wedding date for August 15th. Elegant, not extravagant. Catherine had been married briefly in her 20s, so she didn't want anything ostentatious. It's about us, not the show, she'd said. I agreed completely. The engagement was 18 months long. We were both busy professionals, and we wanted time to merge our lives properly. I expanded my home office into a workspace for 2 so she could work remotely when needed. We discussed children. She wasn't sure. I was open to the idea. Retirement goals, investment strategies. Everything was planned, reasonable, discussed like the adults we were. Then came March 17th. I had returned early from a business trip to Denver. A parts supplier had resolved our issues faster than expected, allowing me to catch an earlier flight. I hadn't told Catherine, thinking I'd surprise her. The surprise was ultimately mine. I entered our house quietly around 10 p.m. There were wine glasses on the coffee table, music playing softly upstairs. I assumed Catherine was taking a bath. She often did in the evenings when I was away. I headed upstairs to greet her. The bedroom door was partially open. I heard Catherine's voice, breathless, intimate, a tone I recognized well. Then a man's voice responded. I didn't burst in or make a scene. I simply pushed the door open slowly and stood in the doorway. Catherine and a man I recognized as her coworker James were in our bed. They froze when they saw me, the classic deer in headlights look that would be comedic in any other context. Daniel, Catherine gasped, pulling the sheet up. You're supposed to be in Denver. Clearly, I replied, my voice shaking with anger despite my attempt to stay calm. I looked at James. Get the hell out of my house, now. To his credit, he moved quickly, grabbing his clothes and dressing quickly, while Catherine clutched the sheet, her face cycling through shock, embarrassment, and then, most tellingly, calculation. Once James had bolted out, Catherine began the predictable routine. Tears. It wasn't what it looked like. A mistake. Too much wine. Loneliness. I stood there, fists clenched, letting her talk herself out. How long? I finally asked, my voice low and dangerous. She hesitated, and I knew immediately this wasn't a first-time thing. 8 months, she admitted quietly. 8 months. While we were planning our wedding, while we were merging our finances, while I was expanding my home to accommodate her career. Get out, I said coldly. Pack your stuff and get out tonight. Daniel, please, we can work through this. Get out of my house. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. You can come back for the rest of your things tomorrow when I'm at work. Leave your key. She left in tears, taking only an overnight bag. I locked the door behind her, poured myself a whiskey, and spent the night alternating between rage and disbelief. But surprisingly, I slept better than expected. The clarity of knowing it was over brought a strange kind of peace. She returned the next day while I was at work, as agreed. When I got home, more of her things were gone, and her tea was on the kitchen counter. I changed the locks anyway. We had a brief, tense phone conversation the following day. I outlined how we would cancel wedding arrangements and how she could arrange to get the rest of her stuff. Catherine alternated between tears, promises of therapy, and attempts to downplay what had happened. 8 months isn't just a mistake. I told her bluntly, it's a damn choice you made every single day. She finally dropped the act. Fine. Yes, it was a relationship. James gets me in ways you don't. He's passionate, exciting. I don't give a shit. I cut her off. Go be with him. Just stay out of my life. I contacted our wedding venue that afternoon, explained the situation, and was relieved when they offered a partial refund, despite their usual no-refund policy. The manager was sympathetic. Apparently, cheating fiancés are common enough in their business. Most vendors gave at least partial refunds when I explained and provided evidence, screenshots of Catherine's own texts admitting the affair. By the end of the week, I'd recovered about 60% of my deposits. Most vendors were understanding. By the end of the week, I'd recovered nearly all deposits, except for the custom invitations that had already been printed. Catherine stayed with a friend while looking for her own place. Things were moving forward, painfully but finally over, until Catherine's friend Megan visited me. Catherine is devastated, she began, sitting stiffly on my couch. I imagine she is, I replied, not offering her anything. She made a mistake, but throwing away 6 years over one slip-up seems extreme. 8 months of slip-ups, I corrected. Megan shifted uncomfortably. She says it only happened a few times. She's lying to you, just as she lied to me. Megan leaned forward. Look, Catherine is 38. Do you know what that means for a woman? Her chances of getting married again, having children, you've taken those opportunities from her by wasting her best years. I stared at her, genuinely confused. I didn't take anything. Catherine cheated. That has consequences. She's consulting with an attorney, Megan said, standing. I thought you should know. After she left, I called my own attorney, Jonathan, a college friend who specialized in family law. He listened to my account and sighed. It sounds like she might be considering a breach of promise suit, he explained. They're rare nowadays and mostly outdated, but in our state, they can still be filed if there are claims of specific financial damages or career sacrifices made for the relationship. Breach of promise? I'm not the one who broke promises. I know that, but these cases can get messy. Start gathering all evidence of the infidelity. Also, documentation of any joint plans or investments you made for the wedding and future. I wasn't particularly worried. I had evidence, logic, and truth on my side. Still, I followed his advice meticulously, organizing everything from text messages to financial records. 3 weeks later, I was served with lawsuit papers. Catherine was suing me for loss of economic opportunity, claiming that by inducing her to relocate and invest 6 years in a relationship that I terminated without just cause, I had deprived her of prime career advancement and reproductive years. She was seeking $440,000, a figure her lawyer had apparently calculated based on salary differential from her job change, future earning potential, and some creative math regarding the market value of her lost reproductive years. Jonathan was as shocked as I was. This is unusual, to say the least. She's essentially trying to monetize the relationship as if it were a business partnership that you dissolved. Can she actually win this? Unlikely, given the circumstances, but courts can be unpredictable. We need to prepare thoroughly. Over the next 2 months, my life became a blur of depositions, document submissions, and legal consultations. Catherine's legal team pushed an aggressive narrative that I had lured her away from a promising career trajectory, that I had repeatedly promised her a specific lifestyle, that I had discouraged her from advancing in her career to support mine, and that I had abruptly canceled our wedding without sufficient cause, leaving her emotionally devastated and economically disadvantaged. The last claim was the most galling. Without sufficient cause was how they characterized finding her in bed with a colleague. The day of the initial hearing arrived. Catherine sat across the courtroom, dressed conservatively. The picture of a wronged professional woman. Her attorney presented their case first, painting me as a controlling partner who had wasted the golden years of Catherine's life, then abandoned her when she sought emotional fulfillment elsewhere. When my turn came, Jonathan first established the timeline of our relationship, the mutual nature of all our decisions, and then, most crucially, the extensive evidence of Catherine's infidelity. Text messages. Hotel receipts James had carelessly left in her car. The testimony of my neighbor who had seen James's car at our house multiple times during my business trips. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, reviewed the evidence carefully. Then came the piece that ended it all. Catherine's own messages to James, recovered from our shared cloud storage account. "I can't wait until Daniel's company expands enough for me to quit working altogether," she had written. "And, once we're married, I'll have security no matter what happens between us. And most damning, James, you're my passion, but Daniel is my retirement plan." Catherine's face drained of color as the messages were read aloud. Her attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable. The judge peered over her glasses. "Miss Richards, am I understanding correctly that while engaged to the defendant, you were not only involved in a physical affair, but were also discussing your engagement in explicitly mercenary terms?" Catherine stammered something about messages being taken out of context. "Furthermore," the judge continued, reviewing another document, "your own employment records indicate that you received a promotion and salary increase after relocating, contradicting your claim of career sacrifice." Before Catherine's attorney could mount a response, the judge continued, "This court does not recognize wasted reproductive years as a compensable claim, nor does it view voluntary relationship choices as economic entitlements." She dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning Catherine couldn't refile on the same grounds, and ordered Catherine to pay my legal fees, a sum approaching $30,000. Catherine left the courtroom in tears before the judge even finished speaking. Her attorney avoided eye contact as he gathered his materials. Jonathan patted my shoulder, whispering, "Cleanest win I've seen in years." I felt no triumph, just relief and a profound sadness for what might have been. 2 weeks later, Catherine appeared at my door, looking messy and tired. The perfect hair and makeup I was used to seeing were gone. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly. "I lost my job. James was promoted to the position I was in line for." I said nothing, waiting. "My attorney is demanding payment. My friend wants me to find my own place. I can't afford the legal fees yet, and I can't even afford an apartment deposit." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I didn't think it would all fall apart like this." "What did you expect would happen, Catherine?" "I don't know. That you'd fight for me, maybe. That the judge would see how much I'd given up for this relationship. That something would work out." She wiped her eyes. "Can you help me? Just until I get back on my feet?" I studied her for a long moment. "No." The word hung in the air between us. "No?" she repeated, as if the concept was foreign. "Your choices led you here, Catherine. Not mine. You chose to betray our engagement. You chose to sue me rather than accept responsibility. You chose to view our relationship as a transaction rather than a partnership." I stood up. "I recommend contacting your parents for assistance." "They won't help," she said bitterly. "They think I've disgraced the family. They're old school." "They're right," I said simply. "Not about the disgrace, but about facing the music for your actions. That's not old school. It's life." She left with no more dignity than she had arrived with, making vague threats about telling everyone what you're really like. I changed my phone number the next day and instructed my home security system to alert me if she returned. She didn't. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved back to her hometown, taken a job at a smaller logistics company, and was living with her sister. James, apparently, had never had any intention of leaving his wife. As for me, the aircraft parts business continued to thrive. I sold the house, too many memories, and purchased a smaller place closer to my manufacturing facility. I dated casually for a while, then met Elaine, a patent attorney who approached relationships with the same clear-eyed practicality I valued. We've been together for 8 months now, taking things at a measured pace. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh with Catherine at the end. Then I remember the calculated betrayal, the lawsuit, the attempt to monetize what should have been the most personal aspects of a relationship. No, I wasn't too harsh. I was exactly as responsive as the situation demanded. If there's a lesson in all this, it's that relationships can't be treated like business mergers, with profit motives and exit strategies. They require authenticity, honesty, and fundamental respect. Catherine saw me as a means to an end. I saw her as a partner. We were never going to succeed with such different definitions of love. Edit. Since this post has gained traction, I'll address some common questions. Yes, the breach of promise lawsuit was real, though unusual in modern times. My attorney said it was one of only 3 he'd seen in his 20-year career. The messages between Catherine and James were legally obtained. Our home network backed up all devices to a shared cloud account that was in my name and that I paid for. The court determined I had legitimate access to those records. No, I don't feel guilty about not helping Catherine financially after the case. We were no longer engaged. She had sued me maliciously, and she was an employed professional with family resources, however reluctant they might have been to help. For those saying I should have seen warning signs earlier, perhaps. In retrospect, Catherine was always more concerned with outward appearances and financial security than I realized. She frequently compared our lifestyle to her more affluent friends' situations. Still, she never explicitly indicated she viewed our relationship as a business arrangement until those messages came to light. Some have asked if my current relationship has a prenup plan. Yes, Elaine and I have already discussed this. We're both comfortable with the concept of protecting our respective assets. That's what rational adults do. Update. 6 months later. Life continues to move forward positively. The company secured a major contract with a European aircraft manufacturer, which will significantly expand our operations. Elaine and I are discussing moving in together next year, proceeding cautiously but optimistically. Catherine apparently tried to restart her lawsuit in another jurisdiction, but was quickly shut down. She's now working for a small transportation company in her hometown, and, according to mutual connections, telling a very different version of our story. That's her prerogative. The most unexpected development came from Catherine's parents, who contacted me to apologize for their daughter's behavior. They're old-school folks who believe in accountability, and they were embarrassed by the lawsuit. We had dinner when they were in town, surprisingly pleasant conversation about everything except Catherine. If there's any wisdom I've gained from this experience, it's this. The right decision rarely feels good in the moment, but it always feels right in retrospect. Standing your ground isn't about anger or revenge, it's about self-respect and truth. I lost an engagement but found clarity. In the balance of life, that's a trait I can live with. During a dinner night, she joked, "You're lucky I settled for you. I could have had my ex back anytime." Everyone laughed, except me. I just smiled. 2 days later, she found her credit cards removed from our joint account and a note, "Go get him then." Marriage is built on respect. That's what my father told me when I asked him the secret to his and Mom's 42-year relationship. "You can overcome almost anything if the respect is there," he said. "Without it, you've got nothing." I thought I understood what he meant. Turns out, I had to learn it the hard way. I met Claire 7 years ago at a friend's New Year's party. She was stunning in that effortless way, smart, confident, with a sharp wit that could cut glass. I was immediately drawn to her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, and we've been married for just over 5 years now. Claire had been in a relationship with a guy named Mark before we met. They dated through college and for a couple of years after. According to Claire, they'd broken up because he wasn't ready to commit and she was. Mark had gone to work overseas after their breakup, and that was that. Or so I thought. For the most part, our marriage has been good. We both have solid careers. I run my own consulting business, and she's a marketing director at a major corporation. We bought a house 3 years ago, travel regularly, and generally enjoy our life together. Sure, we've had our rough patches, but what couple doesn't? The incident happened 3 weeks ago. We were hosting a dinner party for Claire's birthday. 8 guests including her sister Emma, her brother-in-law, and some close friends. The evening was going well. Good food, plenty of wine, lots of laughter. We were in the middle of dessert when the conversation turned to relationships. Emma was telling a story about a disastrous blind date she'd been on before meeting her husband. Everyone was sharing their dating horror stories, and the wine was flowing freely. Remember Mark? Claire's friend Tasha asked her, grinning. Didn't he try to get back with you right before you met Rob? Claire nodded, her cheeks flushed from wine. Oh God, yes. He suddenly realized what he'd lost and came crawling back. But you were already with Rob by then, right? Someone else asked. Claire hesitated. Well, we had just started dating. Nothing serious yet. I frowned slightly. This was news to me. Claire had never mentioned Mark trying to reconcile. Didn't he move back from London just for you? Emma asked. Claire shrugged, taking another sip of wine. He says that's why he came back. The conversation might have moved on, but then Tasha said, I saw on Instagram he's single again, still looking good too. That's when it happened. Claire looked across the table at me, a strange smirk on her face. You're lucky I settled for you, she said with a laugh. I could have had Mark back any time. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I just smiled politely and excused myself to get coffee from the kitchen. As I stood there waiting for the coffee to brew, I replayed her words in my head. Settled for you. Not chose you or fell in love with you. Settled, like I was the consolation prize, the backup plan. When I returned with the coffee, the conversation had moved on. Claire was animated, telling a story about a work event, seemingly oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. I went through the motions for the rest of the evening, smiling, pouring drinks, playing the good host. But inside, something had shifted. After our guests left, Claire was tipsy and affectionate, apparently having forgotten her comment entirely. She tried to initiate intimacy, but I begged off, claiming I was tired from hosting. She fell asleep almost immediately, while I lay awake beside her, thinking. The next morning, Claire had a hangover and no memory of her settled for you comment. I didn't bring it up. I needed time to process, to figure out if this was just a thoughtless drunk remark or something more revealing. I spent the day going about my usual routine, but my mind kept returning to her words, to the casual way she'd said them, to the fact that she'd never told me about Mark trying to get back with her when we first started dating. That night, I checked our phone records online, something I'd never done before. What I found sent a chill through me. Regular calls to a number I didn't recognize, always during her lunch break, or when she knew I'd be busy with clients. The calls had been happening for months. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I did some digging. The number belonged to Mark. He hadn't moved back overseas as Claire had led me to believe. He was living just 30 minutes away, working for a competing firm in the same industry as Claire. A cold sense of clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about a thoughtless comment at a dinner party. This was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. I spent the next day making preparations. Claire and I had joint accounts for household expenses, but we'd maintained separate accounts for our personal spending and savings. My business had its own accounts, of course. Claire had her own personal cell phone plan in her name, though we split the bill as part of our monthly budget. We'd set things up this way at the beginning of our marriage because it made sense for our financial situation. Now, I was grateful for the separation. I called my lawyer first, then my accountant. I explained the situation and asked for advice on protecting my assets while I figured out my next steps. Both advised caution and discretion. I decided on a measured approach. I removed Claire's credit cards from our joint household account and transferred them to her personal account instead. This wouldn't leave her without access to funds. She had her own money and cards linked to her personal account, but it would send a clear message that our financial entanglement was changing. I also removed my automatic contribution to our shared household account, transferring my portion of our monthly expenses to my personal account instead. That evening, Claire texted me, saying she'd tried to buy groceries with the joint account card, and it had been declined. I replied that I'd handle it when I got home. When I arrived, she was frustrated. My card was declined at the grocery store, she said. I had to use my personal card. What's going on with our joint account? I removed your cards from the joint account, I said calmly. I've also stopped my monthly transfers into it. She stared at me, bewildered. You did what? Why would you do that without talking to me first? Do you remember what you said at the dinner party? About settling for me? About how you could have Mark back any time? Her face fell. I said that? Rob, I was drunk. You know I didn't mean anything by it. I might have believed that, I said, if I hadn't found out about the calls. Color drained from her face. What calls? The ones to Mark, multiple times a week, for months, always when you knew I wouldn't be around. She sank into a chair. It's not what you think. We're just friends. Friends you hide from your husband? Friends you lie about? You told me he moved back overseas. I didn't want you to get the wrong idea. And what idea would that be, Claire? That my wife is maintaining a secret relationship with an ex she once considered choosing over me? She started crying, insisting there was nothing physical between them, that they were just close friends who understood each other. That I was overreacting. I left you a note, I told her. It's on your dresser. She went upstairs and returned with the envelope I'd left. Inside was a handwritten letter. Claire, I've removed your cards from our joint account and stopped my monthly contributions to it. Your personal accounts remain untouched, so you still have access to your own money. You said I was lucky you settled for me and that you could have Mark back anytime. I've been thinking about that statement a lot. I don't want someone who settled for me. I want someone who chooses me every day, the way I chose you. So here's your chance. Go get him then. I'll be staying at the lake house for a few days while you decide what you want. If it's Mark, I won't stand in your way. If it's our marriage, we have a lot to discuss. She looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her face. This is insane. You can't just change our financial arrangements because of one stupid comment and some friendly calls. I'm not cutting you off from money, I said. You have your own income and accounts. I'm just separating my finances until we figure this out. It's about respect, Claire. It's about honesty. It's about whether I'm your choice or your fallback plan. Of course you're my choice. I married you, didn't I? Yes, but now I'm wondering if that was because Mark wasn't available, not because I was who you really wanted. She tried to argue more, to explain away the calls, the common lies about Mark's location. But the damage was done. The trust was broken. I packed a bag and left for our lake house, a small property I'd inherited from my grandparents that we used for weekend getaways. The first night alone was the hardest. I questioned everything. My decision, our marriage, my own worth. Had I overreacted? Was I being too harsh? But then I'd remember her words, the casual cruelty of them, and the secretive calls, and I knew I'd done what I needed to do. The next day, I received a text from Claire. Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. This feels like punishment rather than problem solving. I didn't respond. This wasn't about punishing Claire. It was about giving both of us space to evaluate what we really wanted. On the second day, Claire called. I'm coming to the lake house, she said when I answered. We need to talk in person. I'm not ready for that, I told her. I need more time. How much time does it take to decide if you want to throw away a 5-year marriage over a stupid drunk comment? This isn't just about the comment, Claire. It's about the secrecy, the lies, the fact that you've been in regular contact with an ex you clearly still have feelings for. I don't have feelings for him. Then why hide it? Why lie about where he lives? Why call him when you know I won't find out? She had no good answer for that. I stayed at the lake house for 4 days, using the time to reflect on our marriage. I realized there had been other signs of disrespect that I'd overlooked or excused. Subtle put-downs disguised as jokes. Dismissive comments about my business when talking to her corporate friends. Small lies about where she'd been or who she'd been with. When I finally returned home, Claire had prepared a full apology dinner. She'd cleaned the house, bought my favorite wine, cooked my favorite meal. She looked relieved when I walked in the door. I was afraid you weren't coming back, she said. I almost didn't, I admitted. Over dinner, she apologized profusely. She showed me her call log, with no recent calls to Mark. She swore nothing physical had ever happened between them, that the calls were just friendly catch-ups that she'd hidden because she knew I'd misinterpret them. I've deleted his number, she said. I've blocked him on all social media. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. The thing is, Claire, I'm not sure it can be fixed. Once respect is gone, what's left? Love, she said immediately. Commitment, history, all the good parts of our life together. But without respect, those things wither. And right now, I don't feel respected. She promised to change, to prove her respect for me, to rebuild the trust she'd broken. I agreed to try marriage counseling. It was a start, but not a solution. That was 3 weeks ago. We've had 2 counseling sessions so far. The therapist has helped us communicate better, but the underlying issues remain. Claire thinks I'm making too much of a drunken comment and some innocent phone calls. I think she's minimizing a serious breach of trust. I've moved back into our house, but I'm sleeping in the guest room. I'm civil, even friendly at times, but the emotional distance remains. Claire oscillates between remorse and resentment, between trying to win me back and accusing me of overreacting. Last night, she came to the guest room after a glass of wine and asked if I was ever going to forgive her. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm trying. What can I do to make this right? She asked, tears in her eyes. I don't think it's about doing something specific, I told her. It's about understanding why what happened was so damaging and changing the patterns that led to it. She nodded slowly. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about respect. I never realized how some of my comments must have sounded to you. I thought I was just teasing. It was the first time she'd acknowledged the broader pattern, not just the specific incident. Would you consider moving back to our bedroom? She asked. Not yet, I said. I need more time. She accepted that answer without argument, which itself felt like progress. I don't know if our marriage will survive this. The trust is deeply damaged, and rebuilding it will take time and consistent effort from both of us. But for the first time in weeks, I feel like there's a possibility. What I do know is that I'll never again ignore the importance of mutual respect in a relationship. As my father said, without it, you've got nothing. And I deserve more than nothing. I deserve a partner who chooses me every day, who respects me completely, who would never, drunk or sober, suggest that she's settled for me. Whatever happens with Claire, I've found my own self-respect again. And that, at least, is something worth holding on to. Update 3 months later. It's been 3 months since the dinner party incident, and several people have asked for an update, so here it is. Claire and I are still together, but our marriage has changed significantly. We've continued with counseling, weekly sessions that have been difficult but necessary. Through this process, several truths have emerged. First, Claire's relationship with Mark was more complicated than she initially admitted. While she maintains nothing physical happened, she eventually confessed that their conversations often veered into emotional territory that crossed boundaries. They reminisced about their past, complained about their present, and occasionally speculated about what-if scenarios. Not quite an emotional affair, but dancing right along the edge. Second, my reaction, removing her cards from our joint account, while less extreme than what some might have done, still came from a place of hurt rather than healthy communication. Our therapist pointed out that making unilateral financial decisions, even when legally within my rights, wasn't a constructive way to address relationship problems. I've acknowledged this, and we've since worked on better ways to communicate when feeling hurt or disrespected. The most significant revelation came during our 6th counseling session. When pressed about why she maintained secret contact with Mark, Claire finally broke down and admitted something she'd never told me. Mark had left her to take a job overseas, not the other way around, as she'd always claimed. He had returned to the States about 2 years ago and reached out to her. Her "I could have him back anytime" comment wasn't just disrespectful. It was a lie she told herself to protect her ego from the rejection she'd experienced years ago. This explained a lot about our relationship dynamic. Claire had been carrying this wound of rejection, trying to convince herself and others that she had been the one in control all along. My reaction to her dinner party comment had inadvertently exposed this vulnerability, which is partly why she responded with such defensiveness. Understanding this hasn't automatically fixed our problems, but it has changed how we approach them. Claire has started individual therapy in addition to our couples sessions. working through her issues with rejection and her tendency to use subtle put-downs as a defense mechanism. As for me, I've moved back into our bedroom, but intimacy is still a work in progress. Trust rebuilds slowly. We've established open phone policies by mutual agreement, not constant checking, but transparency about communications. She's been forthcoming about her interactions and whereabouts, not out of obligation, but as a genuine effort to rebuild trust. We've also established clearer boundaries around how we speak to and about each other, both in private and in public. No more jokes at the other's expense. No more minimizing each other's concerns. No more secrets. The most encouraging sign came last weekend when Claire's company had their annual dinner. As we were getting ready, she said, "You know, I'm really lucky to have you." Then she caught herself and added, "Not lucky like I settled. Lucky like I got exactly what I wanted and needed, even if I didn't always know it." It was a small moment, but it felt significant. Evidence that she's becoming more mindful of her words and their impact. Are we completely healed? No. There are still difficult days, moments of doubt, old patterns that try to reassert themselves. The counselor has told us that rebuilding trust after this kind of breach typically takes 1 to 2 years of consistent work, not just 3 months. We're still in the early stages, and we both recognize that. But we're both committed to the process of rebuilding. And for now, that's enough to keep moving forward. We've restored our joint financial arrangements, though with more transparency and communication than before. The biggest lesson I've learned through all this is that respect isn't just about big betrayals or obvious insults. It's in the small, everyday interactions, the words we choose, the boundaries we maintain, the truths we tell or withhold. And rebuilding it requires the same attention to detail. The same daily commitment. I don't know if Claire and I will make it in the long run, but I do know that whatever happens, I'll never again compromise on the fundamental need for mutual respect in a relationship. Some lessons once learned can't be unlearned, and for that, at least, I'm grateful. Her sister slipped and said, "You're way better than her 10 other exes. She finally chose a good guy, but she told me I was her first." I smiled until I found a journal where she rated every guy she slept with. I was last. She came home to a printed copy taped to the door, highlighted in red. Hey viewers, real quick, only 8% of you watching are subscribed, and the channel's kind of stuck right now. If you enjoy these stories, hitting that subscribe button would really help us keep going. Thanks. I'm 29M Jake, typing this while Lisa packs her stuff upstairs. This happened yesterday, and I'm still processing the sheer audacity. Saturday afternoon, Lisa 26F and I were having lunch with her family. Her sister Emma 24F had too much wine and started getting chatty about Lisa's dating history. "Jake, you're seriously the best boyfriend Lisa's ever had. Way better than her other 10 exes. She finally chose a good guy." The table went quiet. Lisa's face turned red. Her mom shot Emma a look that could kill. 10 other exes? I kept my voice casual, but my brain was doing math. Lisa forced a laugh. "Emma's exaggerating. You know how she gets with wine." But Emma wasn't done. "Remember that guy Marcus? And before him there was Tyler and that jerk from college." "Emma, shut up." Lisa's voice was sharp now. I'd been with Lisa for 8 months. She told me early on that she'd only been with one guy before me. Her high school boyfriend Tommy. Said she wanted to wait for the right person, that intimacy was special to her. I respected that. Found it refreshing, actually. Turns out I was number 12, not number 2. The rest of lunch was awkward. Lisa kept apologizing for Emma's confusion. Emma kept drinking and looking confused about why everyone was mad at her. That evening, Lisa tried to smooth things over. "Jake, Emma was drunk. She gets our friend group mixed up with my dating life. You know how sisters are." Lisa, she was pretty specific. She even started naming guys. "She's thinking of my college friends' boyfriends." Emma's always been weird about details. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. Lisa was fidgety, avoiding eye contact, over-explaining everything. Looking back, this wasn't new behavior. She'd always been secretive about her phone, weird about running into people around town, always had explanations for everything. Sunday evening, Lisa was at her book club. I was looking for my phone charger and remembered seeing one in her nightstand drawer last week. That's when I found it. A leather journal tucked behind some magazines. I wasn't snooping. I was literally reaching for a charger cable when I felt it, but when I pulled it out, it fell open to a page titled The Complete List in Lisa's handwriting. My stomach dropped. It was a rating system. Names, dates, scores out of 10 for different categories: performance, size, technique, relationship potential, overall experience. Detailed notes about what each guy did right or wrong. 12 names total. I was at the bottom. Number 12. The entries weren't just from before we dated, they were ongoing. She'd been updating this thing throughout our entire relationship. My scores? 4 out of 10 for performance, 3 out of 10 for size, 6 out of 10 for technique, 2 out of 10 for excitement factor. Overall rating 3.8 out of 10. The notes were worse: sweet but boring, predictable, tries hard but no natural talent, good boyfriend material but disappointing physically. Can live with it for stability. Can live with it for stability. The guy above me, Marcus, got straight 9s and 10s. Best I've ever had. Amazing connection. Wish he wanted something serious instead of just fun. Another ex got an 8 overall with notes like, incredible chemistry, made me feel alive. Too bad he moved away. Number 3 on the list had notes, wild and exciting. Never knew what to expect. Relationship was chaos, but the physical connection was unreal. I sat there reading this thing for 30 minutes, every detail of our private moments analyzed and compared to 11 other guys, ranked dead last in almost everything that mattered to her. Entry after entry showed me what Lisa really thought, that I was safe, reliable, boring, the guy she settled for when the exciting ones didn't work out. The most recent entry was from last week, 8 months with Jake. Still hoping things improve, but starting to accept this is just how he is. At least he's stable and treats me well. Good enough for long term, even if not exciting. When Lisa got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the journal closed in front of me. Hey babe, how was book club? She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Interesting, I was looking for a phone charger in your nightstand. She glanced at the journal and her face went white. Jake, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for 8 months? That I'm actually your 12th, not your 2nd? That you've been rating our sex life like a Yelp review? It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Lisa. You kept a scorecard. I'm in last place. She started crying. Jake, those numbers don't mean anything. I love you. You love that I'm stable. You love that I'm good enough for long term. You settled for me because the guys you actually wanted didn't want commitment. That's not true. It's written in your handwriting, Lisa. Can live with it for stability. Your words. Jake, please. That was just frustration. Everyone has bad moments. The last entry is from last week. You wrote that you're starting to accept this is just how I am 1 week ago. She had no answer for that. Pack your stuff, Lisa. We're done. You can't be serious. You're ending us over some stupid journal. I'm ending us because you've been lying to me about who you are, and because apparently I'm the worst of 12 guys you've been with. Jake, I'll throw the journal away. We can start fresh. The journal isn't the problem, Lisa. The problem is that you think so little of me but stayed anyway because I'm safe. That's not love. That's settling. She cried harder. Where am I supposed to go? Call Marcus. He got straight 9s. I went to my office, scanned every page of that journal, and printed the whole thing. Took about an hour to get every page clear and readable. While Lisa showered, I highlighted every mention of my name in red. Every score, every comment, every comparison to other guys. Then I taped the printed pages to the inside of our front door. All 22 pages. She'd see them the moment she tried to leave. When she came out of the shower, I was sitting on the couch. Your bags are packed and by the door. Your printed journal is taped to it. Might want to grab both. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You printed my private journal? Your private journal where you rated our relationship like a restaurant review? Yeah, I printed it. Jake, that's personal. So was our sex life. But you turned that into data points. She ran to the door, saw the papers, and started ripping them down frantically. This is insane. What's insane is keeping detailed notes on your boyfriend's sexual performance without telling him. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Something you should try. Lisa grabbed her bags and the torn papers. This isn't over, Jake. Yeah, it is. She slammed the door so hard the walls shook. Update 1. 1 week later. The fallout has been exactly what you'd expect. Thanks for the comments. Good to know I'm not crazy for having standards. Lisa spent the week trying to do damage control. First came the apologetic texts. Jake, I was keeping that journal from before we got serious. It doesn't reflect how I feel now. Jake, please call me. We can work through this. Jake, I'm staying at Emma's. She feels terrible about what she said. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the angry texts when she realized I wasn't budging. You had no right to print my private thoughts. You're being ridiculous over something that doesn't matter. I hope you're happy ruining what we had over your ego. Tuesday, Emma called me. Jake, Lisa's a mess. She really loves you. Emma, she ranked me last out of 12 guys. That's not love. She was young when she started that journal. People change. She updated it last week, Emma. Called me disappointing but good enough for stability. Maybe you could try being more, I don't know, exciting? The audacity. Emma, your sister lied to me for 8 months about her entire dating history. This isn't about me being exciting enough. She was protecting your feelings. By lying and keeping a scorecard, that's not protection. That's manipulation. I hung up. Wednesday, Lisa's mom called. Jake, Lisa made a mistake, but this is fixable. Mrs. Chen, your daughter lied to me about being essentially a virgin, then kept detailed notes about how disappointing I am in bed. What exactly is fixable about that? She chose you, Jake. That has to count for something. She settled for me. She literally wrote that she can live with it for stability. That's not choosing someone. That's accepting them as good enough. Jake, she's young. She's learning about relationships. She's 26, not 16. And she learned enough to rate 12 different guys with detailed performance reviews. Thursday brought the reality check I needed. My buddy Alex called. Dude, I heard about you and Lisa. That journal thing is crazy. How'd you hear about it? Lisa called Sarah crying about it. Sarah told me. But here's the thing. I knew about some of Lisa's exes. She wasn't exactly quiet about her dating life in college. What do you mean? Remember when you guys first started dating, and you mentioned she was inexperienced? I almost said something then, but figured it wasn't my business. You knew she was lying? Jake, half our friend group knew Lisa in college. She dated constantly, had a reputation for being particular about guys, always comparing them to each other. So other people knew. Lisa had been lying to me while our mutual friends knew the truth. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because nobody wanted to get involved in relationship drama. Plus, we figured if she wanted to reinvent herself with you, that was her business. Reinvent herself? Lisa was always pretty shallow about dating, really focused on looks and performance over personality. We thought maybe she'd grown up when she got with you. Turns out Lisa hadn't grown up. She'd just gotten better at hiding who she really was. Friday, I got the validation I needed. I was at the gym when Marcus walked over. Yeah, the 9 out of 10 Marcus from the journal. Jake, right? I'm Marcus. I think we need to talk. My first instinct was to avoid drama, but curiosity won. What's up? Lisa came by my place yesterday. Wanted to reconnect, started telling me about your breakup. And she showed me some journal pages and asked what I thought about her rating system, like she wanted my opinion on whether her scores were fair. I stared at him. She showed you the journal? Parts of it, including her notes about me. Look, I'm not trying to cause problems, but you should know she did the same thing when we dated. The rating system? Yep. Found out she was taking notes on our dates, comparing me to other guys, keeping track of everything. Made me feel like I was being evaluated constantly. Why'd you break up? Because dating someone who treats relationships like performance reviews is exhausting. She was never just present in the moment, always analyzing, comparing, keeping score. She told me you didn't want commitment. Marcus laughed. I didn't want commitment with someone who treated me like a test subject. Big difference. So Lisa's pattern went back years. The journal wasn't some recent thing. It was how she approached all relationships. Update 2. 3 weeks later. Lisa's desperation reached new heights this week, and I learned just how deep her deception went. Our mutual friend group had a barbecue Saturday. I wasn't sure if I should go, but decided I wasn't going to hide. Lisa showed up an hour later with some guy I'd never seen before. Tall, muscular, looked like he stepped out of a fitness magazine. Lisa was all over him, laughing too loud, touching his arm constantly, making sure everyone noticed. Our friend Mike pulled me aside. "Dude, she's totally trying to make you jealous. Mission failed. I feel bad for the guy." "You're not bothered at all?" "Mike, would you be jealous if your ex brought a new guy to prove she was over you?" "Probably, yeah. Even if you found out she'd been rating your performance and you came in last place?" "Oh, yeah, that changes things." But here's where it got interesting. Sarah, Alex's girlfriend, came over looking uncomfortable. "Jake, can I talk to you privately?" We walked to the corner of the yard. "I need to tell you something about Lisa, about her dating history." "What about it?" "You know how she told you she'd only been with one guy before you?" "Yeah, Tommy from high school." Sarah shook her head. "Jake, there was no Tommy. I went to high school with Lisa. She didn't have a boyfriend named Tommy. She barely dated anyone in high school." My brain started spinning. Then who was the one guy she claimed to have been with? "That's just it. She made him up. The whole story about waiting for the right person, being inexperienced, all of it was fake." "How do you know?" "Because Lisa and I were roommates junior year of college. I watched her date constantly. She had a different guy every few weeks, and she was always weird about it, taking notes, comparing them, talking about them like they were projects." "She's been doing this for years?" "Since I've known her. But here's the really messed up part. She used to brag about manipulating guys by pretending to be inexperienced, said it made them feel special and try harder." I felt sick. "She planned this from the beginning." "Jake, I'm sorry. I should have said something when you guys started dating, but I thought maybe she'd changed." "Why are you telling me now?" "Because of what she's doing to that new guy. I heard her on the phone earlier telling Emma about her research on him. She's already planning how to play him." Lisa wasn't just documenting her relationships, she was engineering them. Sunday, Emma called me. For the first time, she sounded genuinely apologetic. "Jake, I owe you a huge apology." "For what?" "For what I said at lunch that day, and for defending Lisa this whole time." "What changed your mind?" "I found something in Lisa's old room at my parents' house, a box of journals, not just the one you found, journals going back to college." "More rating systems?" "Worse. Plans. She literally planned out how to manipulate different types of guys. There's a whole section about playing innocent to make guys feel protective and special." "Emma, Jake, there's a page about you, from before you guys even started dating. She researched you through mutual friends, found out you were looking for something serious, and planned the whole, inexperienced thing specifically for you." The room started spinning. Lisa had targeted me. She planned everything? The sweet, innocent act, the story about Tommy, waiting to have sex until you felt special, all of it was calculated to make you fall for her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because that new guy she's with? I heard her on the phone planning the same thing. She's gonna tell him he's only her second or third. Play up the inexperience angle again." "Emma, your sister is seriously messed up." "I know, and I'm sorry I helped her cover for it." Final update. 2 months later. Time for the final chapter. Lisa's house of lies finally collapsed completely, and the ending was more satisfying than I could have imagined. Last month I ran into fitness magazine guy. Turns out his name is Ryan, at the coffee shop near my office. "You're Jake, right? Lisa's ex?" "Yeah, you're the guy from the barbecue." "Former guy. That situation went south fast." "What happened?" "Found out she'd been lying about everything. Her dating history, her experience level, even her name." "Her name?" "She told me her name was Elizabeth and that she went by Lisa as a nickname. Her real name is Lisa Marie, but she's been telling guys different versions of her name and background for years." "Damn. But here's the kicker. I found her journal. Same setup you probably saw, ratings, comparisons, detailed plans for manipulating guys. She didn't learn anything. Gets worse. I was number 13 on her list. She literally wrote that she was upgrading from you because I was more physically appealing, but that she'd probably have to downgrade again because I was too smart to control long term. So I wasn't even Lisa's rock bottom. I was just another step in her ongoing project." "How'd you find out about the lying?" "Her sister Emma actually called me, warned me about Lisa's patterns, and told me to run." Emma had apparently decided to stop enabling Lisa's behavior entirely. What did you do? Same thing you did. Printed out her journal pages and left them where she'd find them. But I went a step further. How? Posted the relevant pages in our college alumni Facebook group. Turns out there are a lot of guys who've dealt with Lisa's rating system over the years. Ryan showed me his phone. The Facebook post had over 200 comments from guys sharing similar experiences with Lisa. The word predatory came up a lot. She's basically been running the same con for years. Target nice guys, play innocent, get them emotionally invested, then treat them like experiments while looking for upgrades. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Marcus. Jake, you need to hear this. Lisa called me crying yesterday. About what? The Facebook thing blew up her whole social circle. She's apparently had to move back in with her parents because none of her friends want to deal with her anymore. Good. But here's the best part. She asked if I thought she could rebuild her reputation by getting back together with one of her exes and proving she'd changed. Let me guess, she wanted to get back with you? Nope. She wanted to get back with you. I laughed out loud. After everything that happened, she said you were the most forgiving of her exes and she could probably convince you she'd learned her lesson. Even at rock bottom, Lisa was still scheming. What did you tell her? That she'd burned that bridge pretty thoroughly when she rated you last place in her journal. Last week, I got one final text from Lisa. Jake, I know you hate me, but I want you to know I really did love you. I just didn't know how to show it properly. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't respond, but I did save the screenshot because it perfectly captured who Lisa really was. Still manipulating, still playing victim, still trying to control the narrative. Sarah from our friend group texted me yesterday. Thought you'd want to know. Lisa tried to join our book club. We voted no. Nobody wants to deal with her drama anymore. Turns out, when you treat people like experiments for years, word gets around. Me, I'm doing great. Started dating someone new 2 weeks ago. Jessica's 27, works as a teacher, actually communicates like a normal person. No journals, no ratings, no elaborate manipulation schemes. The difference is incredible. Jessica treats our relationship like a partnership, not a research project. When we have conversations, she's present instead of analyzing. When we're intimate, she's focused on us instead of comparing me to a mental scorecard. Most importantly, Jessica told me about her dating history honestly from the start. 3 previous relationships, why they ended, what she learned from each one. No lies, no manipulation, no fake personas. I learned something valuable from the Lisa experience. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them. Lisa showed me she was someone who lied about fundamental things and treated relationships like experiments. The journal wasn't the problem. It was just the evidence. The rating system was never about my performance. It was about Lisa's need to control and categorize everyone in her life. She couldn't just experience love. She had to study it, measure it, manipulate it. That's not partnership. That's pathology. For any guy reading this who discovers his girlfriend has been keeping score, it's not about you not being good enough. It's about her treating human connection like data collection instead of experiencing it authentically. Lisa didn't settle for me because I was safe. She targeted me because she thought I was controllable. The difference matters. I'm grateful Emma had too much wine that day. Saved me from wasting years with someone who saw me as a project instead of a person. Best last place finish of my life. I helped my girlfriend get a job at my company. 2 months later, I got called into HR. She filed a harassment report against me to take my position. When I confronted her, she said, "It's nothing personal. I just saw an opportunity." I didn't say a word. I let the investigation finish. This morning, she's locked out of the system. 47 missed calls and counting. I don't even know where to begin with this mess. I guess I'll start with the basics. I'm 32, male, been working at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle for about 4 years now. I started as a developer and worked my way up to lead software architect for our main product. The job pays well, has good benefits, and most importantly, I genuinely enjoy the work and the team I've built around me. About a year ago, I met Olivia, 29F, at a friend's housewarming party. We hit it off immediately. She was smart, ambitious, and we seemed to share the same values. She worked in tech too, but at a smaller startup that was struggling financially. We started dating, and things moved pretty quickly. By month 3, she had moved into my apartment, and we were talking about long-term plans. Around 6 months into our relationship, Olivia's company went through a round of layoffs, and she was let go. She was devastated, not just about losing her job, but about how it happened. No warning, just a Friday afternoon Zoom call, and that was it. The tech industry can be brutal that way. For 2 weeks, she applied to jobs with little success. The market had tightened, and positions that would have had 20 applicants a year ago now had hundreds. Watching her confidence erode day by day was heartbreaking. Then, as luck would have it, a junior developer position opened up on a different team at my company. It wasn't at her previous level. She'd been a mid-level developer at her startup, but it was a foot in the door at a stable company. I hesitated at first. I've always been wary of mixing my personal and professional lives, but Olivia was getting desperate, and I truly believed in her skills. I put in a good word with the hiring manager, Meredith, who's an old friend. I made it clear that Olivia should be evaluated on her own merits, but my recommendation definitely helped her get the initial interview. She did the rest herself, acing the technical assessment and impressing in her interviews. 2 weeks later, she got the offer. I was thrilled for her, and those first few weeks seemed perfect. We'd commute together, have lunch when our schedules aligned, and she seemed grateful for the opportunity. She was smart about maintaining professionalism at work. No excessive PDA, no special treatment expected. If anything, she worked harder than necessary to prove she deserved to be there regardless of our relationship. Then, about 2 months in, things started to change subtly. Olivia began staying late at the office, saying she wanted to impress her team lead. She started getting invited to meetings with upper management, unusual for her position, but I figured she was just making a good impression. She asked more questions about my projects, wanting to understand the architecture decisions and business logic beyond what her role required. I found it endearing at the time, thinking she was just excited to learn. What an idiot I was. Last Monday, I got called into a meeting with HR and our department VP. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw their faces. HR doesn't schedule same-day meetings for good news. They explained that a harassment complaint had been filed against me by a female employee. They couldn't reveal who, citing confidentiality, but the allegations were serious. Using my position to pressure a subordinate into a relationship, making them feel their job security depended on maintaining personal relations with me, and creating a hostile work environment. I was floored. I've always been meticulously professional, especially since taking on leadership responsibilities. I couldn't think of a single interaction that could have been misconstrued this way. When I asked for specifics about the alleged incidents, they said they couldn't share details during an active investigation, but that I would be temporarily reassigned to work remotely on a different project while they sorted things out. Walking back to my desk to collect my things, I felt like everyone was staring at me. 4 years of reputation, potentially ruined by accusations I couldn't even defend against yet. I packed up quietly and left, shell-shocked. That evening, Olivia came home later than usual. She was different, energetic, almost giddy. She barely asked about my day, instead launching into a story about how she'd been pulled into a meeting with the CTO to discuss some ideas she had. I sat there, numb, as she talked, and suddenly everything clicked into place. "Did you file a harassment complaint against me?" I asked, interrupting her mid-sentence. The way her expression changed told me everything before she even spoke. First surprise, then instant defensiveness. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her tone suddenly cold. "Why would you accuse me of something like that?" "Because I was called into HR today about a harassment claim from a female employee, and it's pretty coincidental that you're suddenly getting pulled into high-level meetings." She maintained her innocent expression, but I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. "That's ridiculous, Nolan. Maybe someone else reported you. Have you considered that you might have actually made someone uncomfortable? In 4 years, I've never had a single complaint. Then suddenly, 2 months after you start, this happens?" She switched tactics, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't believe you don't trust me. After everything we've been through. She moved toward me like she was going to embrace me, but I stepped back. Stop. Just stop. I know it was you. Her demeanor changed instantly, the tears vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. She studied me for a moment, then sighed. You know what? Fine. It doesn't matter anyway. It's done. Why? I asked, still struggling to understand. I got you this job. I vouched for you. And I appreciate the foot in the door, she said with a shrug, but I was never going to advance quickly enough from a junior position. Your role, on the other hand. She trailed off. So this was always the plan? Get in through me, then get rid of me? Not from the beginning, she said, and I could tell this was the closest to honesty she'd been. But once I saw how things worked there, how the leadership structure operated, how decisions were made, I realized I'd never move up fast enough the conventional way. What about us? Our relationship? She looked at me with something resembling pity. Nolan, we wanted different things. You were content with your position, your steady progress. I need more, faster, and honestly? She hesitated, then continued with brutal frankness. The passion wasn't there anymore, hasn't been for months. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not just that she'd betray me professionally, but that our entire relationship had apparently meant so little to her. And you thought filing false harassment claims was easier than just breaking up with me? Breaking up wouldn't have solved my professional situation, she said simply. And I have evidence, by the way. All those times you messaged me about work, the late-night emails about projects, it all looks different in the right context. HR always sides with the accuser initially. By the time they sort through everything, I'll have proven myself in the role. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just looked at her and said, pack your things. You have until tomorrow evening to find somewhere else to stay. She crossed her arms. This is my apartment too. My name is on the lease. Then I'll leave. But we're done, Olivia, completely done. You're overreacting, she said, but I could tell by her expression that she knew this wasn't something she could manipulate her way out of. Fine, I'll get my essential stuff tonight and come back for the rest later. She grabbed some clothes and toiletries, all while acting like I was the one being unreasonable. Before she left, she turned to me one last time. You know, this wouldn't have been necessary if you'd just helped me advance normally. You could have recommended me for team lead positions, put my name forward for projects, but you were always so concerned about conflict of interest and earning your way. Some of us don't have the luxury of waiting years to be recognized. With that parting shot, she left. I stood there in our suddenly empty apartment, trying to process how the woman I thought I knew could justify something so calculating. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about every conversation we'd had about work, every document she might have seen on my laptop, every architecture discussion where I'd explained critical systems to her. Then I remembered something crucial, something that gave me a sliver of hope. I'm meticulous about documentation and communication. I keep records of everything, partly because it's good practice in software development, partly because I've always been detail-oriented to a fault. I have logs, emails, recorded meetings with consent banners, and detailed notes from every significant work interaction. The next morning, instead of fighting the investigation or trying to plead my case prematurely, I sent HR a simple email. I understand you need to investigate these claims thoroughly. I am fully cooperating and have complete confidence the truth will emerge. Please let me know if you need any additional information from me. Then I started pulling together my evidence. I created a timeline of every interaction I'd had with Olivia at work, all in public spaces or group settings. I gathered witnesses who could attest to our professional behavior. I collected text messages showing the progression of our relationship well before she joined the company, proving we were already living together when she was hired. I had dozens of photos of us together at events, trips, and family gatherings, establishing a clear timeline that contradicted her claims. Most importantly, I dug up the digital trail. Remember those architecture discussions where I'd explained systems to her? They weren't casual pillow talk. They were recorded team meetings she'd asked to join to learn more about the overall product. Her questions weren't innocent curiosity. They were targeted information gathering, evidenced by her notes that someone from her team had shared with me months ago, thinking I'd be proud of her initiative. I also found emails where she'd specifically asked me for work advice, time-stamped from evenings or weekends, clear evidence that I wasn't forcing work discussions on her. She had initiated many of these conversations herself. I even had our original dating app conversations from a year ago, proving we met well before she joined the company. I didn't confront her again. I didn't rant on social media or try to rally colleagues against her. I simply provided HR with organized, factual information and let the investigation run its course. Meanwhile, I focused on the temporary project I'd been assigned, determined to show my value to the company regardless of the circumstances. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing concrete. Olivia had moved most of her things out while I was working from a coffee shop. From occasional texts with coworkers, I heard rumors that she'd been joining leadership meetings and presenting ideas suspiciously similar to ones I'd discussed in our architecture sessions. Then yesterday afternoon, I got a call from the VP and head of HR asking me to come in for a meeting this morning at 8 a.m. They wouldn't give details over the phone, but there was a different tone to their voices. Less stern, more apologetic. I arrived early, professionally dressed, calm despite my racing heart. The meeting was brief but decisive. Their investigation had found no evidence supporting the harassment claims. In fact, they'd uncovered substantial evidence that the complaint was filed maliciously, with intent to manipulate staffing for personal gain. "We owe you an apology," the VP said, looking genuinely remorseful. "We had to take the allegations seriously, but we should have handled it better. Your position is reinstated effective immediately, with appropriate compensation for the disruption." HR explained that they couldn't share specific actions taken against the employee who filed the false report, still maintaining confidentiality, though we all knew who they meant, but assured me that company policy on false accusations was being strictly enforced. I thanked them, accepted their apology, and headed to my desk, my real desk, with my team nearby. As I logged into my computer, a company-wide email arrived announcing some organizational changes. My name was there, officially reinstated as lead architect, along with a new initiative I'd be heading. Olivia's name was nowhere to be found. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing. First a text from Olivia. "What did you do?" Then another. "My badge isn't working." Then calls, one after another, growing increasingly frantic. By midday, I'd received 47 missed calls from her, dozens of texts, ranging from confused to angry to pleading. I haven't responded to any of them. From what I've gathered through the office grapevine, this morning Olivia arrived to find her access revoked. When she tried to contact her manager, she was directed to HR, who informed her that her employment had been terminated due to violation of company ethics policies and making false claims against another employee. Apparently, she didn't go quietly. Security had to escort her out as she demanded to speak to the CTO, insisting there had been a mistake. According to the receptionist, she was still standing outside the building 2 hours later, alternating between calling me and trying to get other employees to let her in as they passed. The strangest part? I don't feel the satisfaction I expected. Mostly, I feel tired and sad that someone I trusted could be so calculating. But I also feel relieved that I kept my cool and let the system work the way it's supposed to. I've blocked her number now, and I'm staying with a friend for a few days in case she shows up at my apartment. The locks are already changed. Turns out, I can be calculating too when necessary. I guess the lesson here is document everything, trust your instincts, and remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't some elaborate scheme. It's simply letting someone's own actions catch up with them. Update, 1 week later. First, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support on my original post. I wasn't expecting that level of response, and reading your comments helped me feel less alone during a pretty dark time. It's been a week since everything went down, and I promised some of you an update, so here it is. The aftermath has been intense. After blocking Olivia's number, she found increasingly creative ways to try contacting me. Emails from new addresses, messages through mutual friends, even a handwritten letter slipped under my friend's door. How she found that address, I have no idea, and it's more than a little concerning. Her messages followed a predictable pattern. First, angry accusations, "You set me up." Then minimizing what she did, "It was just a small lie that got out of hand." Then self-pity. "My career is ruined because of you." And finally, desperate pleas. "Please just talk to me, I can explain everything." I haven't responded to any of them. The most bizarre development came 3 days ago when she somehow got my mother's phone number and called her, sobbing about how I had misunderstood the situation and claiming we were actually engaged but having a fight. My mom, bless her, saw right through it. "If you were engaged to my son, why haven't I met you in the year you've been dating?" Olivia apparently hung up immediately. At work, things have been surprisingly positive. My team welcomed me back with what can only be described as collective relief. Turns out, during my absence, Olivia had tried implementing some changes to our architecture that would have created serious technical debt down the line. My temporary replacement had pushed back, but she'd gone over his head, claiming the changes were originally my ideas. My VP pulled me aside on my second day back and explained more about what happened behind the scenes. Apparently, Olivia's plan might have worked if not for one key miscalculation. She'd targeted the wrong person. I have a reputation as someone measured and detailed, while she was still relatively unknown. When my evidence contradicted her claims so thoroughly, they dug deeper and found some disturbing patterns. 1. She'd been selectively forwarding herself confidential emails from project discussions she wasn't supposed to have access to. 2. She'd approached several senior developers with leading questions, then presented their insights as her own in meetings with leadership. 3. Most damning of all, they found draft emails in her company account where she'd practiced her harassment narrative, refining the details to make them both believable and difficult to disprove. She'd even researched company policies about harassment complaints and saved links to articles about how to document workplace hostility. She'd forgotten that drafts are stored on company servers and that IT regularly monitors research patterns for security purposes. The VP assured me that beyond the termination, they've strengthened some security protocols and improved their investigation procedures as a result of this incident. Small comfort, but at least some good came from it. On the personal front, I've been staying at my friend's place while I sort out the apartment situation. Legally, since both our names are on the lease, it's complicated. I've spoken with the landlord, who was surprisingly understanding, and I'm either going to break the lease with a penalty or take over the full rent until it ends in 4 months. Either way, I'm not going back there to live. Too many memories, and frankly, I don't entirely trust that Olivia won't show up unannounced. Several friends who knew us as a couple have reached out. Most have been supportive after hearing what happened, but a few took her side initially, believing I must have done something to provoke such actions. One former friend actually suggested I should have stepped aside gracefully if she wanted the position that badly. Needless to say, we're no longer in contact. The most unexpected conversation came from Meredith, the hiring manager who'd given Olivia a chance based partly on my recommendation. She took me to lunch yesterday and apologized profusely, feeling responsible for bringing Olivia into the company. I assured her the fault was entirely Olivia's. Meredith had simply evaluated a candidate who interviewed well and had the technical skills for the position. Neither of us could have predicted this outcome. "I've been in tech for 20 years, Meredith said, "and I've seen politics and backstabbing, but this was calculated on another level." She used your relationship as both a weapon and a shield. That comment has stuck with me because it's so accurate. Olivia leveraged our relationship to get inside information, then weaponized it with false harassment claims, all while assuming the relationship would somehow survive her betrayal, that I'd eventually forgive her because of our personal connection. The level of compartmentalization required for that kind of thinking is chilling. I've started seeing a therapist to work through everything. It's only been 2 sessions, but it's already helping me process the anger and confusion. The hardest part isn't the professional betrayal, it's questioning my own judgment. How did I miss the signs? Were there red flags I ignored? My therapist says this kind of second guessing is normal after betrayal, but it doesn't make it easier. One positive outcome. Yesterday, I signed a lease on a new apartment in a secured building. It's a fresh start in a different neighborhood, and I'm actually excited about it. I'm buying all new furniture too. Nothing from the old place, except my personal items and professional equipment. As for Olivia, I heard through the industry grapevine that she's been reaching out to contacts, claiming she left my company due to ethical differences and is looking for new opportunities. In our relatively small tech community, however, word travels fast. 2 companies have already contacted me discreetly to verify her employment dates and ask vague questions about her departure. I've been professional, confirming only the facts without editorial comments. The truth doesn't need embellishment. The calls and messages have finally started to slow down. Yesterday, I only received 3 attempts at contact, compared to the dozens daily right after her termination. Progress, I suppose. I keep thinking about what she said that night. I need more, faster. I wonder if she still thinks it was worth it, now that she's not only lost the position she schemed for, but potentially damaged her reputation in the industry, all for a career readjustment that lasted less than 2 weeks. I'm still processing everything, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. Work has been a welcome distraction. There's something therapeutic about solving concrete problems with definitive solutions when your personal life is in chaos. Thanks again for listening. I'll post another update if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm focused on moving forward and rebuilding. The best revenge, as many of you said in comments, is living well. And that's exactly what I intend to do. 2 months later. It's been just over 2 months since my last update, and I'm finally ready to close this chapter of my life. So much has happened, and yet in some ways, it feels like I've just been quietly rebuilding while the drama burned itself out. First, the professional aftermath. I'm still at the same company, and things have actually improved significantly. The project I was leading has launched successfully, and the team dynamic is better than ever. There's something about going through a crisis together that either breaks people or bonds them. Thankfully, in our case, it was the latter. The company implemented some changes to their harassment reporting procedures. Nothing that makes legitimate reports harder to file, but additional safeguards against malicious claims. I wasn't directly involved in those decisions, but my VP mentioned that my situation had been a wake-up call about potential vulnerabilities in their processes. I've been promoted to senior architecture lead with an expanded team, partly as recognition for handling the situation professionally, and partly because, let's be honest, the company probably wanted to ensure I didn't look elsewhere after what happened. The raise and additional equity were substantial enough that I didn't argue. Now for the Olivia updates, which are both predictable and surprising. After my last post, her contact attempts finally stopped when I sent her a formal cease and desist letter through an attorney. It wasn't legally binding in the strictest sense, but it conveyed that I was documenting the harassment and prepared to take further steps if necessary. The letter also outlined exactly what I knew about her actions, the forwarded emails, the practiced narratives, everything, which I think finally made her realize there was no narrative she could spin to make herself the victim here. What I didn't expect was what came next. About 3 weeks after the cease and desist, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. It contained a single PDF file, a formal, written apology from Olivia. I was suspicious at first, thinking it might be another manipulation tactic, but as I read it, something felt different. She acknowledged everything she'd done, offered no excuses, and explicitly stated she wasn't asking for forgiveness or a response. The tone wasn't the polished, calculated Olivia I'd come to expect. It was raw and seemed genuinely remorseful. The most revealing part came near the end. I've started therapy to understand why I was willing to hurt someone I cared about for professional advancement. The therapist suggested it stems from growing up in a household where love was always conditional on achievement. That's not an excuse, but perhaps an explanation. I'm still working to understand myself. I didn't respond, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect me. Not enough to want any contact with her again, but enough to hope she gets the help she needs. Some wounds run deeper than we realize. As for her professional life, I heard through mutual connections that she left Seattle entirely. She's reportedly working at a startup in Austin now, at a level well below what she had at my company. I choose to believe that's a consequence of her actions, rather than evidence that she's continuing the same patterns elsewhere. Either way, it's not my concern anymore. On the personal front, I'm fully settled into my new apartment and have been slowly establishing routines that feel like me again. I've reconnected with hobbies I'd let slide during the relationship, playing guitar, weekend hiking, even took a cooking class just for the hell of it. Dating feels like a distant prospect right now. Several friends have tried setting me up, but I've been honest that I'm not ready. I'm not sworn off relationships forever or anything dramatic like that, but I need time to trust my own judgment again first. The most unexpected positive has been the strengthening of my other relationships. Friends who stood by me during the worst of this have become even closer. My parents visited last month, and the conversations we had were more open and authentic than they've been in years. Even my relationship with colleagues has evolved to something deeper than just professional courtesy. I've thought a lot about what I've learned from all this. The obvious lesson is to be cautious about mixing personal and professional lives, but that feels too simplistic. Sometimes opportunities to help people we care about are legitimate, and refusing out of fear isn't the answer either. I think the deeper lesson is about observation and boundaries. I missed signs with Olivia, not because they weren't there, but because I wasn't paying attention to patterns that contradicted the narrative I wanted to believe. And when the truth became undeniable, having clear boundaries, both personally and professionally, enabled me to respond effectively rather than reactively. The other day, I was reviewing some code from a new team member, and I found myself explaining architecture decisions in the same way I used to explain them to Olivia. There was a brief moment where the memory stung, but then I realized, my willingness to teach and share knowledge isn't the problem. That's actually one of my strengths. The problem was sharing it with someone who saw it as intelligence to exploit, rather than wisdom to respect. So I'm not changing who I am fundamentally, just being more mindful of who I share myself with. And that feels like growth rather than cynicism. For those who asked in comments on my previous updates, no, I never took legal action beyond the cease and desist. The company's response was swift and appropriate, and dragging things into a legal battle would have kept the wound open longer. Sometimes the best path forward isn't about maximum punishment, but about clean closure. I think this will be my final update on this situation. Life moves on, and while this experience will always be part of my story, it doesn't define me or my future. If there's a silver lining, it's the clarity that comes from having your trust severely tested. You learn what you value, who you are when challenged, and how resilient you can be when necessary. Thank you all again for the support, advice, and occasional tough love throughout this process. It made a difference knowing I wasn't navigating this alone. TLDR. Ex-girlfriend who tried to sabotage my career has moved across the country, sent an unexpected apology, and appears to be facing appropriate professional consequences. Meanwhile, I've been promoted, moved into a new place, and am rebuilding a life that feels authentic and secure. Sometimes the best revenge really is just moving forward.